Min Ji-won was surprised by my words. Battle of Hwangsangbul? Yes, Silla originally won the Battle of Hwangsangbul. This is according to history. Chu Wangning's sword ran through a Hwadong member. Obviously, Silla would win if it was like history. But before I could speak, the captain of the Hwadong came forward and shouted, "Don't retreat! There's no stepping back in a battle!" At the same time, the Hwadong pulled out their weapons. "No! Victory! Loyally serve the king! Serve!" All the Hwadong of Silla are subjected to the effect of mundane world of the 5 commandments, level 2. Haha, you're pushing them! Gibok's incarnation, Chu Wangin, cried out. Hwadong's captain came running towards him with a spear. He was following his damn sponsor. The character, Chu Wangin, has used the stigma, Bakjie Kingdo level 3. The body of the Hwadong captain flew through the air after being hit by a sword. I shouted towards Min Ji-won. "Tell him to set up the formations." "Take your formations! Hurry!" The character, Min Ji-won, has activated military command level 2. The army has lost their sense of reason. The skill activation is cancelled. "Set up the formation!" Min Ji-won screamed again, but the Hwadong was already inspired by the mundane world 5 commandments and didn't listen to her orders. In the first place, they were loyal to the beauty of Queen Jesong, not her charisma. I heard a sound, then Lee Gilliang landed next to me from where he broke through the window of the museum's 2nd floor. "Hyung, should I call Titano?" Lee Gilliang's eyes shone as he prepared to use diverse communication. "No, it's okay." It'd be helpful if Lee Gilliang could call the 6th grade Insect King like last time, but he then would be unconscious for 2 days. High-grade monsters were difficult to control, and could also sweep away allies. In any case, Lee Gilliang was my hidden card. I had to save him till the beginnings of the War with Kings. The Hwadong in front of us were knocked out. On the other hand, there wasn't a single dead Bakjie person. I reached out to Yusang, who ran towards me. "Yusangashi, the relic!" Yusang handed me the relic. The Ganpyeonggui. Everyone was distracted by the 4-yin demonic beheading sword, but in fact, the Ganpyeonggui was an essential item for the 4th scenario. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword had no meaning if this item didn't exist. The captain of the Hwadong was in wreck as he was hit by Chu Wangin again. It wouldn't be strange if he died in one more blow. The constellation, Hwadong knows no retreat, is in a hurry. The constellation, last year of Hwangsangbul, is happy. The constellation, Lady the Brocade Sleep, is irritated. The momentum of the Bakjie army grew, while Silla's morale broke down. It felt like the spirit of Bakjie was flowing from Chu Wangin's body. "Destroy the damn Silla!" The more that the constellations were in a situation similar to the history that they lived, the greater the coordination with their incarnation, and the stronger the power of the stigma. In addition, the encounter with related constellations. It was time for the stage to be created. What? People screamed with surprise. Sparks filled the surrounding space, and the scene changed. Seoul's Gwanghwa Moon was transformed into a rugged mountain wilderness. Stage transformation. It was a phenomenon that occurred when the coordination was high between incarnations, with historical correlations. Stage transformation summoned the space-time that the constellations fought in. Of course, the space wasn't really changed. It was close to augmented reality. The problem that this wasn't the case for the people who summoned the stage. "I missed you, Hwangsangbul." Chu Wangin achieved a considerable level of coordination with his sponsor and shouted. Now he seemed to completely believe he was Gibok. Gibok was in a hurry. If a constellation did something like this in the early scenarios, it was likely that they would receive a sanction from the Bureau. However, Gibok was less likely to be affected than the low-level constellations. The frightened Hwadong started to step back. Lee Sung-kook muttered, "He isn't one of the 7 kings, but he has such power. Does this make sense?" It's possible because Gibok is the protagonist of this stage. Chu Wangin was a mad monster as he ran around. Once stage transformation occurred, and the coordination with the sponsor increased, the incarnation's strength would multiply. I looked at the trembling Min Ji-won and opened my mouth. I have 2 ways. One is to let the incarnation of Gwacheong die. What do you mean? Originally, the Battle of Hwangsangbul was a battlefield that the Silla won thanks to Gwacheong's sacrifice. One half of the battle was complete if he died. As soon as stage transformation began, this has become the battlefield of history. If the incarnation of Gwacheong dies, the morale of the Silla troops will rise due to their anger. This is recorded in history. I didn't listen to Min Ji-won's answer. The second way is to change history. I looked at the Gwangpyeonggui in my hands, an astronomical observation device produced by the Joseon in the 17th century. Min Ji-won felt uneasy and asked, "What will happen if it fails?" "Your country will perish." "Then of course it will be the first option." This was truly Queen Jinseon. She was considered an incompetent ruler for a reason. "I didn't mean to give you a choice. I'll do the second method." "Then why did you mention it?" "I gave you a chance. You're not what Silla needs right now." I manipulated the two disks that made up the Gangpyeonggui. The two disks were called the Sky Disk and the Earth Disk, respectively. The top was the Earth Disk, and the bottom was the Sky Disk. There was a simple definition for the Gangpyeonggui and the ways of survival. The Gangpyeonggui is an item that can find the constellations in heaven. As I slowly turned the Earth Disk, the constellations engraved in the Sky Disk started to burn brightly. Gangpyeonggui's special option, Echo of the Stars, has been activated. Echo of the Stars allows you to ask for the help of a constellation. A constellation can refuse your request, and the number of times Gangpyeonggui can be used is reduced when the constellation responds to the request. There were 7 constellations left on the Sky Disk. In other words, I can use them 7 more times in the future. It would have been good if there were more constellations left in the relic. Well, it couldn't be helped. Lee Sung-kook seemed to notice something and asked, "Are you going to get help from a constellation with that?" Not all the constellations are available, but there are some great people. Lee Sung-kook was filled with admiration at my answer. He belatedly found out the true value of this item. "That's it!" Lee Sung-kook cried out excitedly. "How about calling Zhang Yu or Lu Bu? If you call them, you can easily deal with Gebak." I had to know the modifier of the constellation. In the world of ways of survival, the modifier was like the constellation's space-time coordinates. The modifiers were like the X and Y axis coordinate system in the star stream. Then... Lee Sung-kook made a sad expression. He thought I didn't know the modifiers of Lu Bu and Zhang Yu, but that was an illusion. There was no one in the world who knew as many constellation modifiers as me. I'll call a constellation. The great constellations hear your voice flowing through the stars. Of course, the constellation I was calling wasn't Lu Bu or Zhang Yu. There's no guarantee they would respond to this quest, and there was someone more fitting for this battlefield. I stared at the stars in the sky. I faced the numerous stars and opened my mouth. I want to call the Hwarang leader, King Hongmu the Great. Star navigation has begun. A part of the sky darkened, and a shadow fell to the ground. The battle between Scylla and Bakja stopped. "What nonsense are you saying?" Chu Wangyin sensed something suspicious and started running towards me. "Representative Nim, we will stop them." Lee Sung-kook pulled out a sword. I didn't know how long the hypnotist would be able to endure, but I should have some time. After a while, one of the stars in the sky shone brightly. He finally appeared. "The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, is looking at you." "General, the constellation, King Hengmu the Great, is listening to you. There are people here who need your help. I'm calling to you because your people are dying." "The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, is silent at your words." King Hengmu the Great. He wasn't royalty, but he was the only person who was given a posthumous name of a king of Scylla. He probably wouldn't reject my request. It was because Hwangsangbul was his battlefield. But something unexpected happened. The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, doesn't want to be involved in the history of modern life. The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, will reject your offer. What? The constellation was about to fade away when Yusanga interrupted. "General, please listen to my words." The smart Yusanga noticed who King Hengmu the Great was. "The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, is looking back. I'm well aware of the general story, the Battle of Hwangsangbul, the Siege of Pyongyang. I've read all about it in the records." Yusanga took a deep breath before starting to talk. "I understand that you want to respect the past and history, but General, some histories don't end after they're recorded." Yusanga's voice was clear and straightforward. "Don't you regret it? The battlefield where young Hwarang were sacrificed and countless people are buried? Have you already forgotten?" The constellation King Hengmu the Great is listening to Incarnation Yusanga's story. "History won't change. The soldiers on the field won't be comforted, and the lives of the young Hwarang won't return. But General, the history here hasn't ended yet. If you come here, at least you can change the history of this place." I'd forgotten how good of a talker Yusanga was. During her early days, she was the queen of PT at Microsoft. "General, your battle of Hwangsangbul is over, but we're still here at Hwangsangbul." The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, has silently closed his eyes. There were such moments in life. I knew what would happen from now on, even if no one said anything. The constellation, King Hengmu the Great, has responded to your request. One of the constellations on Gangpyeonggui disappeared, and a light from the star in the sky shone on me. I smiled at the nervous Yusanga. "Well done, Yusanga-shi. You have temporarily received the protection of the constellation, King Hengmu the Great." The muscles of my body twitched like they were surprised. My heart pumped, and light darkness crossed several times in my head. Something was being constructed inside of me. This is just an old man's reminiscence of the past. This was the mantra of the constellation. Just listening made my existence at stake. "Please lend me your voice for a while." I nodded while opening my eyes. Everyone was looking at me. The incarnation of Gebak, Chu Wangyin, was astonished. That person. The spirit of the constellation was felt despite him not descending directly. This was the size of the existences called constellations. It It's been a while, Gebak. There was a strange depth in my voice. In the distance, the incarnation of Guachang staggered. Huadong Gachang, there's no need to pay respect to me. King Henwu the Great was watching the world through me. He looked at Guangchang, Gebak, and the Broken Soul. I was also watching the world through King Henwu the Great. The sunlight covered the plains of Huangsang. It's funny. Why is it that all of you have gathered here again? Chu Wangyin laughed madly at these words. It was a laugh filled with deep-seated resentment. At this moment, he really was Gebak. Don't you know? It was to meet you again on this field! The character Chu Wangyin has used the stigma, Bakjie Kendo level 4. Chu Wangyin's sword filled with power and moved. Originally, it was an attack I wouldn't have been able to avoid or block, but I avoided the attack without much difficulty. Gebak, why are you doing this to your incarnation? Have you forgotten the constraints of plausibility? You will destroy your incarnation. It was as he said. Gebak was acting unreasonably. I also wondered this as a reader ways of survival. Kim Yushin, you must have heard nothing about this world. What do you mean? It doesn't matter. My wish was achieved the moment I met you. I'll have no regrets even if I die now. I will carry on Bakjie's legacy of Buyong. Gebak of Huangsangbul, I will settle my lifelong regret here. King Henwu the Great watched Gebak's incarnation with sad eyes and opened his mouth through me. I'm the 15th Captain Huadong, Kim Yushin. King Henwu the Great, Huadong leader, Kim Yushin. I will comfort the soul of the unfortunate constellation and correct the history of modern humans. The man who led the battle of Huangsangbul to victory sent me his will. I moved my right hand. A bluish glow grew from the hilt. The sword of the Huadong leader is now in the battlefield. The power of the Starblade, Blue Dragon Sword, is temporarily stored in Unbroken Faith. The blade of the Blue Dragon Sword soared high into the sky of Huangsang. All of Huangsang seemed to scream. Enormous magic power escaped, and a large crack appeared in the earth, centered around me. Dragonflower Tree Unit, come to this place right now. The stigma, gather the Huadong, is activated. Something was happening in the crack. The forgotten ghosts buried in the eternal history. There are no names left, but they were the Huadong who once lived on this land, and who fought only for honor. The Dragonflower Tree, Kim Yushin's elite unit, showed up from the pages of history.